Welcome, everyone. Good morning if you're on the West Coast, and good afternoon if you're anywhere else. Thanks for joining us for the third session of our Modern Product Data Workflows webinar series, presented by Business Innovation Brief, CTO Universe, Project Management Update, and Product Management Today, and sponsored by Looker. I'm Hannah Flynn, the site manager of Product Management Today, and I'm excited to bring you these 6 fresh sessions in the space that are going to bring you hard-earned insight about embedded analytics and all of its applications. I'm really looking forward to interviewing and talking with each participant and what have proven to be interesting and amusing conversations. And don't worry, they're all being recorded in case you have to miss any. Before we go any further, I want to thank Looker for sponsoring the webinar series and helping us to make this happen. Daniel, if you could go to the next slide, please. Looker is an inventive software company employing business intelligence to make data accessible to organizations and data analysts by focusing on the intersection of economics and engineering, helping customers use data to achieve success. Through their fresh approach to business intelligence, Looker helps businesses thrive with easily accessible and consistently defined information. Thanks again, Looker. And on that note, please feel free to ask questions during today's session. You can do so by submitting them into the question panel on the right side of your screen. We'll try to answer as many of them as we can at the end of the presentation. And our lovely Shelley will be acting as tech support today, so she'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Please say hi to her in the question box. And lastly, if you have any audio issues during today's presentation, you may wish to dial in by phone. You can do so by selecting the More button on the upper right portion of your screen, and then select the Switch to Phone option. So today I'm talking to Sam Owens and Jessica Ray at Namely HR, as well as Daniel Mintz at Looker. Sam is lead product manager at Namely, Jessica is a product manager, and Daniel is the chief data evangelist at Looker. I think it'd be best they can tell us a little bit more about ourselves. So Daniel, why don't you start us off and take it away?
Sure, thanks, Hannah. So I'm Daniel Mintz. I'm Looker's chief data evangelist. I was actually a Looker customer for a long time before I was a Looker employee, and I've been doing data and analytics for a while now in a lot of different contexts, dealing with a lot of different data and building out a lot of different data products. And so, I think just to sort of level set what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to really focus on embedded analytics. And if that's not a term that you're familiar with, don't worry. It's a term that I was not super familiar with just a few years ago, but the concept is pretty familiar, I suspect, which is this idea of putting analytics directly into other products. So whether that's an analytics tab that you have inside your web application or inside your mobile app, the idea is being able to show people something about their usage, or if you're working with partners or suppliers, about the customer's usage of their product. And just to sort of say where we're coming at this from, organizations, if they're going to compete today, need to sort of figure out where to make their investments wisely. And that means sort of particularly in the areas where resources are often quite constrained, like engineering, thinking about, well, what is our core competency? What are the things that we really are great at? What is our core product? And what are the other things that we need, but that maybe we can, buy from somebody else or buy off the shelf and customize? And taking this approach really allows you to focus as a product owner and to focus your engineering resources on the thing that makes you different, on the thing that makes you unique, while still providing high quality sort of wraparound services and parts of your product. And this is something that Gartner, the analyst firm, has talked and written a lot about. They realize that for a lot of companies, not surprisingly, growth is where they're going to invest. And so growth can come in a bunch of different ways, right? It could be about growth of new sources of revenue. We want to make investments that can create, more revenue in our existing product lines or even whole new product lines. We want to invest in places that can, transform our product or our services, our offerings, so that we can grow that and get, more customers or grow the usage of our existing customers. And we want to invest in a place that can, really improve our customer experience so that those customers, stick with us, so that it's a stickier product, and also so that our customers, potentially buy more of our product, whatever that is. And so, I think one place to just get a feel for where people are at, where they're coming at this first or this webinar from, it'd be great to sort of understand where people are coming, where people are at in their sort of organization's journey on embedded analytics. And there's a poll now. So, let us know whether this is something that you haven't even started, that you're just starting to think about, whether you're actively planning, you're building, or whether this is functionality that you already have. Do you already have analytics embedded in whatever product or application that you're working on? And I'll give folks a second to vote.
We'll let this go for about 5 more seconds, and we're getting quite the range. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. Here, let's take a look at the results.
So yeah, so it seems like there's the biggest chunk already have analytics embedded for customers. That's great to hear. We didn't dive into exactly what that looks like. I think that can range from, I've been in plenty of organizations where that looked like CSVs or PDFs that were sort of pulled manually on a weekly or monthly basis and sent off to customers. And I've also been at places that had, really sophisticated in-product analytics that people could make use of. So it really does run the gamut. The second largest group of people who are interested but haven't built anything, that's great. And then folks, in the planning phase, building and some, who haven't started yet. So it's a really nice range. I think that the focus for today will hopefully be useful no matter where you're at in terms of your journey. I think we're very lucky today to have two folks from Namely, the HR company, to talk about what their journey was like, to really get down into the details of how they, came at this question of, how do we need this? If we need it, is it something that we should build or that we can buy? If we're going to buy it, who should we buy it from? What are the requirements? What are the trade-offs that we're going to have to make? How can we, effectively create new streams of value? How can we do it quickly without having to make a huge upfront investment before we see any return? Can we measure its impact in terms of higher customer engagement? And so, I will come back at the end, but I mostly want you all to hear the great story of how Namely did this, because I think it's really instructive. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jessica, I think, who is going to kick us off and talk about Namely's journey.
Hey, actually, it's Sam. I'm going to kick things off on the Namely side. There we go. Cool. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the company first. Some quick stats. We were established in 2012. We've since expanded to a bunch of different offices outside of our home in New York City, including San Francisco, Austin, Atlanta, and LA. We've got lots of funding, lots of clients, lots of users. Let everybody kind of look at those for a second, but we're getting to be a pretty good sized company, and we're growing very, very quickly. Our platform, we're a modern HR platform, born in the cloud. We do everything. So we do HR, things like time off and performance. We do payroll, we do benefits, time and attendance. We really are a full HRIS platform. Anything you could need for HR, Namely has. Our mission is to help mid-sized companies build a better workplace. We think this is really important. This is something that gets posted around our office to keep everybody aligned on what we're trying to do here. Getting into the embedded analytics discussion, I'm going to start off by talking about our product strategy, how we went from kind of an organically grown set of tools into something that was deliberately sophisticated and continuing to grow. So what do our customers want? That's a great place to start. HR professionals need to be able to look at a huge amount of data in a variety of different ways. It gets more complex as you look at different clients across different industry verticals, or how big their employee base is, and the general complexity of their organization with respect to things like how many office locations do they have, how many countries do they operate in, how many employee identification numbers do they have. Basically, how complex the business is changes a lot of their needs. And these things on the screen are just kind of a few examples as to what those needs might be. So where did we start? We started with the tools you can kind of see on the screen. We had in our HRIS platform, we had a custom reporting tool. We had some small dashboards that were delivered in a company settings page to administrators. And we had a separate payroll and benefits reporting tool located in the payroll section of our application. So we identified some high priority things that our customers needed. The first was that we wanted a centralized reporting and analytics landing page. Landing page is the term that we use for it. So currently, or the where we started part of our analytics journey involved the different pieces of the analytics product being spread out throughout our application. There wasn't an easy way to go somewhere and find what you might be looking for. You had to know where the HR reporting was. You had to know where the payroll reporting was. You had to know where to find those charts that I showed in the last slide. We wanted to add unified custom reporting across the product. So if you wanted to make a custom report and access both payroll and HRIS data, that was one tool. We needed audit logs. So in the HR world, it's a pretty big deal to be able to figure out who changed what when, particularly around things like managers, salaries, and roles and permissions. And then we also identified a need for high value dashboards with point in time capabilities. So someone might want to look at what their headcount is like today and compare that to what their headcount was like this past January, and compare that to what it was like a January before that. And they want this kind of capability down to the day. So it's pretty granular and introduces some interesting complexities with regard to how the underlying data is set up. Next, we had to prioritize those needs and figure out what were we going to do first and how are we going to order the rest of them. So looking at the landing page, we felt like that didn't make sense to dive into just yet, as we didn't have all of the pieces to pull it together yet, like auditing or those dashboards. With regard to the unified reporting, this comes at the end of kind of reorganizing the Namely data ecosystem. It was viewed as important, but since all of the data was available in the two current reporting tools, while there's definitely a lot to be gained from a better user experience, customers still have access to it, so we didn't think that was as high of a priority either. Audit logs we thought were a solid priority, and they're coming to our platform soon, but they weren't prioritized quite as highly due to the number of customers that were asking for them relative to the number of customers that were asking for things like point-in-time functionality. So the dashboards is really where we found the highest priority need. We didn't have any analytics around things like diversity, salary changes, job changes, so you couldn't look back at a previous quarter and see how many raises did we give out or how many people moved from one department to another. So that quickly rose to the top as the first piece of the puzzle to tackle. Next, we had to figure out, okay, we've chosen to go with this dashboard solution. What do we need to build to actually make that come to fruition? So there are a few different components. The underlying data, the data infrastructure, is a huge piece of this. So the set of dashboards would be the first reporting that we had that reported on things across the system. So I talked about the two ad hoc reporting tools. Those sit on top of originally sat on top of separate data sources as well. So we needed to build a data warehouse and pipelines from our system such that the things that we decided to build into those dashboards were available in a single data store to be served from. There's a lot of complexity there, and if anyone has any questions, please feel free to shoot them in, and we're happy to go into a little more detail. But I'll move on to permissions next. Proper permissioning is a huge deal in the HR world. Who is able to access what data is obviously super important. You don't want an entry-level employee being able to view every person in the company's salary, but there's some additional nuance as well. Decisions need to be made as to when someone can see no dashboard at all, such as an entry-level individual contributor potentially wanting to view the salary dashboard, when someone can see it with limited data, like a manager who should at least be able to see a report across the people that report to them, and when someone can see everything, like an HR admin or an executive. So permissioning is something we knew was going to need a lot of thought, and it was critical to get right. Figuring out the dashboard functionality and design itself is the most obvious piece of this. So we needed to know, what were these visualizations like? What going to look like? What sorts of graphs and charts did we need to show? What sort of table data did we want to present? What kind of filters were we going to allow? How are we going to allow them to set and change point in time dates? What kind of exporting would be allowed? And then just generally, how crowded should these be? We could show 100 different graphs, but at a certain point, there's a very serious drop off in how useful those are. So building all this out, it required not only a great deal of thought, but a lot of functionality to be built out on the engineering side as well. There were also a lot of small details that go into any kind of product launch that needed to be considered, like where do we want to put this? How do we want it to look as at kind of a top level? So next is, how do we deliver all of this? So this is a pretty common little like picture. I'm sure a lot of, if there are PMs on the webinar, this is something you've considered an awful lot, right? You need to balance time, scope, and cost. For us, delivering a high quality product was non-negotiable. So cutting scope was something that was very limited in our opinion. With a large set of new functionality that needed to be built out, time was an important factor to consider. How long were we willing to spend building out all of this new functionality? We have a lot of big aspirations and other things we wanted to build, like the audit logs, the unified reporting, and the other things I talked about a little earlier. And then just generally, how can we get this released as fast as possible? Cost was something that for us was a bit more flexible. If we could show an associated value add, we could justify an increased cost of the project. That led us to wanting to explore a tool that we could use to handle the visual side of our analytics offering. We started looking at multiple providers, trying to figure out what would allow us to deliver the best offering for our customer base. There are a lot of different like scopes of value that we would get from any given vendor. Obviously, Looker is one of the vendors we considered. Those different vendors don't all have the same feature sets, which need to be considered. Another consideration is that our product design team had some concerns. I think this will probably resonate with again, a lot of the PMs out there where, okay, yeah, we could go with an embedded solution where we're doing some percentage of the work through somebody else's platform, but they wanted control over how the product looked very granularly. We ended up deciding to go with Looker. They met a number of our needs in addition to just handling the visualization side. It allowed us to dramatically cut down on the time needed to deliver this. And working with our design team, we were able to get them to kind of come around on using Looker as a solution. With regard to how there are some customization options, we were able to use our custom color scheme. Since we're embedding an iframe, we have some amount of control of what the page looks like around that iframe. So we were able to kind of break through that objection, which really helped get the project rolling much faster than it would have if we had to go through and design absolutely everything from scratch and then build out all of that functionality also from scratch. So namely plus Looker, in addition to allowing us to deliver an amazing product much faster, as well as meet our design team's high bar, Looker offered us a number of other benefits. So in addition to doing the visualizations, they're also an ally with permissions. It's really easy for us to set up the permissions in our system and have it respected in Looker so that people can see the right things that they're supposed to when they load any given dashboard. Again, I'll keep reiterating this one because for us, it was the biggest value add. They dramatically decreased the necessary effort to build out the dashboards themselves and all of the associated functionality that would need to come with it, the charts, graphs, filtering, exporting, all sorts of things that not every potential partner provided. We did spend some time hooking our data up to Looker. So we built this data warehouse that needed to get hooked up to Looker and kind of mapped in their proprietary system. But once we had that built out, the development time really just started to fly by. We were able to build new dashboards really quickly, add and change filtering options, add and change pieces of the dashboard. So If we noticed we maybe put too many things in one or not enough in another, it was very quick to edit those things. And the ease and customization of being able to embed them was a paramount feature for us. This really allowed us to deliver a fantastic experience in our application, with a significant chunk of it being built through Looker. Next, I'm going to pass things off to Jessica Ray, who will dive a little bit deeper into the details and things like customer feedback with you.
Thanks, Sam. So yeah, as Sam said earlier, we started gathering feedback about why we should even take on this project. So I was going to walk through the process of how we went through all of that. So here's some quotes from our NPS survey. So NPS is a Net Promoter Score. So twice a year here at Namely, we send out a big survey to all of our clients and ask for feedback on different features and ask them to rate, like, is this meeting what you need? Some different aspects of that. So some of you may have similar feedback around your reporting tools. I did focus on the negative feedback here because we were trying to figure out, like, what is it that we need to improve to really help make a really great product. So as all of this feedback came in, we spent time going through all of it. So we started tagging it because we needed some way to kind of quantify this qualitative data. So we went through, and in this example, we found someone asking for more graphical reporting options. So we're like, okay, great, that's data visualizations. And then we noticed there were some comments here about better filtering. So we would tag it with that. And then there's also an ask here for a yearly headcount report with the date range filters. So we went through all of this feedback, aggregated all of it together in Excel by tagging it and just using VLOOKUPs and different some of the pieces of functionality that's available in Excel to help understand what type of priorities should we have. So you can see here that some of our top requests were for point-in-time reporting. Some of the next requests were for better filtering, field history, simplify. There was a lot of questions that we got about how our reporting was really confusing. And a lot of it was around that there was lots of different reportings in different parts of the application. It was very complicated to know kind of how to get started. And then we also noticed kind of these are the big subject areas. These are the things that our clients are trying to report on. They want to know attrition. So we're an HR company. You want to know, like, are my people leaving and why are they leaving? You want to know your headcount, like, are we growing? Are we getting smaller? Do we have kind of anything there that we can invest in? So my one tip, if you are going to go through a similar type analysis, is to go ahead and sort based on alphabetically, so you can see the extremely dissatisfied comments followed by the extremely satisfied. So that's just my little tidbit for kind of sanity as you're going through customer feedback. So diving into the Namely Analytics product. So Sam had just one slide up there about kind of our data infrastructure. But the data pipeline is just one aspect of what has come to be our Namely Analytics dashboard. The dashboard is just one aspect. There's a lot of data pipelines and a data warehouse that we had to build as well. So we collected information from multiple sources. We piped that into a data warehouse, did schema design, tested, implemented, created a new infrastructure that really helped power our Namely Analytics and allowed us to do a lot of that point-in-time reporting through the embedded data visualizations. And here's what we came up with. So this is our initial launch of Namely Analytics, which went live in January 2018. So what you're seeing here are screenshots of the Namely application, and then we have the dashboard embedded directly in the application. So we started with 4 kind of subject matter area dashboards, and you can see that we have some filters, so you can expand those out, add different filters. We have a combination of like single metrics, as well as some graphs, and then data tables at the bottom. You can download from the dashboards here, as well as doing filtering, just a couple of different interactions. So one example for the anniversary and birthday dashboard. So here at Namely, you get like a balloon on your anniversary. So our thought was, what we can do for our clients is allow them a really easy place to see all of the upcoming anniversaries, so that you can see, oh, I need to buy so many balloons the next month. So really trying to help think of ways to use dashboards and data visualizations outside of just the things that our clients are asking for. So if you have questions about the specific dashboards, feel free to add those in as well. So with the initial launch, we wanted to continue getting client feedback. We didn't want to wait until the next NPS survey because that was going to be about another 6 months. So we added a little pop-up pulse survey on each dashboard. And then we set this up. We also set up feedback calls, had lots of calls with different beta clients, just trying to get as much information as we could about what people thought, how we did on this initial launch. We noticed something really critical. Our clients kept asking for point-in-time reporting. So going back, 17% of our feedback was say, hey, we want point-in-time reporting. But we realized is they actually wanted to know effective dated reporting. So we defined point in time as how the data was in the system on a given day. But what we found is that a lot of times our clients weren't entering data on the day that it happened. So for example, a manager might give an employee a promotion on July 4th, but they actually meant that to be effective July 1st. By the time the HR manager talks to the HR admin, they may not get the promotion actually entered into our system until July 5th. But when they run analytics, they would want to see that represented as of July 1st. So through this feedback, we adapted and we made the next set of our dashboards based on effective dates, and we're in the process of switching back. So here is the next set of dashboards that we added. So we launched some salary and salary changes dashboards. And then most recently, we launched with a diversity dashboard. So you can kind of see our evolution. We're getting a little bit more comfortable and more involved with the different data visualizations and kind of expanding different subject areas and just getting a little bit better about how to embed these different dashboards into our product. Okay, so in addition to just providing metrics for our clients or for within our product, we also wanted to make sure that we're tracking metrics, we're using data on our side to help guide our decisions. So at Namely, our goal and objective is to have a data-centric product. And the way we're tracking that is we want to have 80% adoption of our clients using Namely Analytics every month. And we want a 6 out of 7 client satisfaction survey. So we decided to start heavily tracking the 80% adoption rate. So if we can get people using it, then we can really focus on making it a great experience. One of the reasons we also decided to focus on that is it's something that we can track and control a little bit more closely. The client satisfaction was only being measured twice a year. So you can see here we have kind of people who are using it every day. And then you can see the different things that we're doing. So if we're doing a launch of a new dashboard, if we're doing a promotional marketing email, kind of what is the impact does that have on our clients? So as of the end of July, we're about 50%, which is good, but it's not great. It's not quite 80. So we wanted to deeply understand like who are the clients who are using our product, who's not using it, and what do we need to do to reach that 80% goal. So to understand our users, we did a cohort analysis. So if you're not familiar, I wasn't as familiar with this type of analysis. So what we did is we broke down our clients based on their size. What was their number of employees? And then we started tracking, once somebody starts using it, do they use it again the next month? And then do they use it again the month after that? And what about the month after that? And how about 6 months later? So here's how we did it. Like I said, we broke down by size. So we bucketed everybody into small, medium, or large. And then we started looking at, did they log in this month? And did they log in again the next month? So you can see here at the bottom, you have small, medium, large, and then the first month returning login. And then did they come back in second, third, and so on and so forth. So the thing that we noticed right away was that our clients had really different reporting needs based on their size. Our larger clients were using analytics a lot more heavily than our smaller clients were. So we started digging into a little bit like what were the different reporting needs there and like what can we do to reach to the different types of clients. Is it that smaller clients just don't need a headcount report because they only have 25 employees? Or is there something about our software that makes it a little bit harder for them to use it properly? Something else that we've noticed through our feedback was that we had some trends in user, there were some really big trends. A lot of our clients were saying like, hey, this isn't complicated enough. We want to have more customization. We want to have more configurability. And on the other side of that, we had a lot of clients who were saying, hey, this is way too complicated. I don't know how to use this. I don't know how to understand the data. So we really need to start finding balance between those two types of users. Some of our challenges, in addition to just the feedback we're getting from customers. So Sam touched on this earlier, but permissions is one of the things we really needed to figure out. Our application has field level permissions. So clients could have some users who had access to see gender, but that user doesn't have access to see ethnicity. So how can we build a diversity dashboard that has that level of granularity within a permission scheme? What we decided to do was to create kind of a new simplified permission scheme for each dashboard. So a user would have access to all of the data on the dashboard, even if they didn't have that field level permission. One of the future considerations that we have for this is how can we anonymize the data? So let's say you have a person who may not have access to see ethnicity, but they have a business need to see the diversity dashboard. So is there something that we can do that if there's like maybe fewer than 5 people in a department, we wouldn't populate that diversity dashboard for that user? So those are some of the things we're getting feedback on and may build into future releases. And then Sam said as well, our design team wasn't 100% on board with an embedded solution. They really wanted to have the specific details to be able to set up spacing and padding around and fonts and all of that. So one of the things we compromised was really focusing the design on setting standards for data visualizations that weren't tool specific. So one example is that all of the graphs shown as a time series should be a line graph, and all lines should be X thickness. So these were some standards that helped us have consistent ways of presenting data across Namely, whether it was an embedded solution, on mobile, or just kind of anywhere that we were building it in. So really kind of focusing the design effort on just thinking about like, here's how we want to present data to our users and not get as specific really helped us all understand and kind of tackle through some of, because those are challenges as well, even with an embedded solution. So you might wonder what's next for Namely Analytics. So we are going to start working on a landing page. So now that we have quite a few of these dashboards ready to go, we want to create a really great place for people to come to and have a dashboard of dashboards. We're going to continue to build out dashboards on different subject areas. So we have data around time off, performance, and job tiers. So we're going to start exploring some different dashboards there. And then continuing to take feedback and iterating on the existing dashboards. So this is one aspect. Most of our embedded analytics had been through an embedded iframe. With the new landing page, we're going to switch a little bit and start exploring the Looker API and doing some of our own visualizations and just finding different ways to do embed. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to pass it back.
There we go. This is Daniel again, and I'm going to take control back. Thanks, guys. That was really fascinating, and I love the level of detail that you were able to give us about sort of all your considerations and the journey that you were following. I think for folks who are grappling with a lot of these same questions, those will likely resonate with them and hopefully be illuminating. So, before we get to any questions, I just want to sort of pull back from the specific experience that Namely was talking about to talk a little bit more about, what we see more broadly. And I think it very much does mirror what Namely was talking about in the specific. We at Looker get to talk to a lot of customers and potential customers who are at, all stages of this journey of implementing embedded analytics, where they're, starting from the very beginning, where they're just saying, this might be something we want to understand more about, to, they're actively building something out, or maybe they've even got something in place that they're thinking about replacing the technology. And, I think one of the main misconceptions that we see, particularly for folks who haven't done this before, is they think, well, embedded analytics, it's some pretty charts, put a database behind that. How hard could it be, right? It would be nice if it were that simple, but unfortunately, it's not. I think as Sam and Jessica talked about, there's just a lot of other things that go into a successful embedded analytic project. There's access control. They were talking about HR data, which is particularly sensitive, but in almost all cases, you're going to want sort of fine-grained control over who can see what. And they didn't even get into this, but that even extends to making sure that not only that the right people at a particular company can see the right kinds of data, but also the absolutely untenable situation where one company could see someone else's data. That would obviously be kind of a nightmare. And so making sure that can't possibly happen. You've got all the normal sort of security concerns. This is private data in most cases. Administering your solution, adding new users, making sure that they have the right permissions when they come in, doing data delivery, which is a really powerful tool for putting data right in front of people. So not just in your application, but also sort of scheduling and automating the delivery of data as a CSV or to another outside system or a PDF. Keeping your business logic agile so that as your business changes, because we all know it will, you can sort of keep up with that, right? If you change some definition in your business logic, some key metric changes its definition, you don't want to have to hunt down 40 different places where that metric is defined. You really want to be able to do that once and know that it will take effect across the board. You've got content as well as sort of the underlying metrics, so dashboards and reports, and keeping those versioned and up to date and properly permissioned. Giving people the access, if you want, to do their own ad hoc reporting, to ask sort of novel questions that go beyond the dashboards you've built for them, scheduling, and a lot more. And so I think what happens a lot of the time is that people come into the project thinking, oh, well, we'll just build some pretty charts and connect them to a database. And then as they start scoping it out, they realize, ooh, there's a lot more here. And that's going back to the sort of the Gartner quotes from the beginning. That's why I really do believe pretty strongly that if there's something that can serve most of your needs, that you can buy off the shelf, it is almost certainly easier, faster, and probably cheaper to buy that rather than trying to build it yourself. It's easy to think that something is going to be cheap because you don't have to pay the upfront price for it. But the reality is, product managers and engineers and designers are not cheap. And so, pulling those people off of your core product for weeks or months or even years is a distraction and costs quite a bit, both in sort of lost productivity and just in straight up compensation. So if you can buy it, I'm a strong proponent of that, not just with embedded analytics, but kind of across the board, I would say. And so as you're thinking about sort of your options for embedding analytics, it's good to think about sort of the pros and cons of the different approaches. Now, if you build something, one of the clear pros there is, as namely discovered when talking to their designers, the sort of full customization, the ability to make it look precisely the way that you want, to integrate, just seamlessly into your existing application. Obviously, that is a big pro there. You're also, because you're going to have developers sort of building it from the ground up, you're going to have the sort of modern workflows that they're used to. And something else that you might not be familiar with, but that is a big pro here, is that the data stays in your control. It stays in your database. And I'll talk a little bit about sort of the alternate scenario in a second. Now, the cons are pretty significant, I would say. One is that it's slow to value. And particularly if this is a new product line, something that you don't have an established customer base for, and you're hoping to upsell it or use it to make your product stickier. As Sam and Jessica said, it's been a process to sort of roll out version 1, get feedback, make changes, get feedback, make changes. And so if you have to build something from the ground up, build it from scratch before you can start rolling it out, even in beta and getting any feedback, that's a real downside. That means that your ability to get those that critical feedback and sort of build agilely is really going to be diminished. And then, one other thing that folks don't always think about, engineers like to not think about this. No offense to any engineers on the call, but engineers love building stuff. Most of them don't so much love maintaining it. But if it's something that you build in-house, then there are going to be maintenance costs. They are going to be ongoing, and you're going to have to bear those. And so taking those into account properly when you're making this decision is really important. So, those are the pros and cons of building. Let's talk about the pros and cons of buying. So one of the pros, the sort of converse of the build one, is you're quicker to value, right? You're starting with a sort of whole product with something that works off the shelf. Now, obviously, you're going to need to do a bunch of work to make it yours and make it customized, but you're not starting from scratch. It's also less distracting. You're paying a company for something that they've paid their engineers to build, so presumably it's a pretty decent thing, and so it's not going to distract your engineers from their core job. And it should be a sort of complete product, right? It's going to offer sort of all of the pieces that you need. You're not sort of assembling it from a bunch of Legos. But on the con side, one core thing is that buying can be pretty inflexible. It may not look exactly the way you like, and even beyond that, it may be very hard to change. A lot of sort of embedded analytic vendors who have been around for a while, this idea of agile is not something that's really baked into their technology, and so you can do a whole bunch of customization up front, which seems great. You get it looking just the way you want, you roll it out, and then your customers give you that feedback and they say, this isn't really serving our needs. Can you change it in this way, and this way, and this way? And you go and talk to the vendor, and they say, oh yeah, well, that's going to take another 6 months and another $30,000 in customization statements of work. So that inflexibility can be a real blocker, and you really do want to understand, if we build this out, are we going to be locked in to the dashboards and reports and data model that we have, or is it something that we can change on an ongoing basis? Another thing that can be a con is scaling these embedded analytics solutions can be very hard. Something you buy off the shelf might be great for 5 customers, might even be great for 50 customers, but you get up to 500 customers and it gets very complex. Dealing with that permissioning, how are you going to do permissioning and access at that scale, is something you should be thinking about up front. And then the last two that sort of go together is, for a lot of these older embedded analytic solutions, the way that they accomplish data separation, the way that they make sure that that critical thing of letting customer A see customer B's data, the way they make sure that that never happens is by physically separating the data, by moving the data out of your core data warehouse that has all of your customers' data and taking just customer A's data and putting it in customer A's data mart, and then taking customer B's data and putting it in customer B's data mart, and so on and so forth. And again, that creates scaling problems, right? Because if you have 5 customers, great, you have 5 little data marts, but if you have 50 or 100 or 500, now you have a data mart for each of those customers. And now, all the sort of complex ETL that you thought you were going to not have to build because, well, we bought a solution, you're actually building it behind the scenes just to do that data separation, to set up the data marts for each of those customers. And so that becomes a huge headache in a lot of cases. And we've actually seen a lot of places where it actually prevented them from rolling their product out more broadly. They got to 20 customers and then they said, geez, the ROI isn't here. Continuing to roll this out to more customers doesn't make sense for us. And so really understanding what that architecture looks like behind the scenes is important. You're also paying now to store your data twice, once in your data warehouse and once in each data mart. And you're losing control of your data, which is really your company's lifeblood. So really understanding how that works before you buy a solution is important. What you really want, the best of both worlds, is something that has a predictable cost and is fast to deploy. So it's avoiding those problems of building it yourself, where we don't really know. We're going to scope it as best as we can, but we don't know how much it's going to end up costing, and we don't know exactly when it's going to launch. You want something that down the road is going to be easy to maintain. You want something that's feature complete, that really is a complete package, but also ideally is modular, right? Where you can pick and choose which modules you want to use. And so if you want to drop in a custom visualization that's custom to your particular use case, you can do that while still taking full advantage of all the other pieces. You want to avoid data movement as much as possible. You want to make sure that you're built to scale, so that if this product really takes off, you're not prevented from scaling it because of the difficulties of doing that. And you want a modern workflow. One of the things we hear from engineers a lot is they have developed really great tools and workflows for building complex software, right? Everything from version control to all the processes around stand-ups and code review and all of that good stuff. And you want to make sure that the tool that you're buying, if you are buying a tool, can maintain all of that. You want to make sure that you have version control. That's when you're building a product, that's critically important, because if something goes wrong, you don't want to have to scramble to fix. You just want to be able to roll back. And so, looking for a product, if you're buying it, that can actually do that is a really critical thing to be asking about. So that's really what you should be looking for. So, that kind of covers the core of the story that we wanted to tell you about sort of how Namely built out their analytics, what the considerations that they were taking into account as they were doing that were, what the key considerations that you should be keeping in mind as you're proceeding on your journey towards embedded analytics are. And with that, I think I'm going to hand it back to Hannah, who's going to take us into Q&A.
All right. Thank you so much, Daniel. And Sam and Jessica, thank you as well for your very interesting look at how Namely has worked with Looker. We have a couple of audience questions coming in, and please, if you have any questions, make sure to pop them in the question box. So Daniel, I'd love to start off with a question for you. touching on what you were just talking about, could you talk a little bit more about why scaling could be more complex for buying versus building, and how a best of both worlds solution accomplishes solving the problem of scaling?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think namely touched on that a little bit, but as you're scaling up, you're going to be working with more customers, so more accounts and more users. And so making sure that the systems that you're buying are going to integrate with the existing systems, that you're not going to have to sort of rebuild all of your permissioning and access systems that you have for your SaaS application in the analytic tab of your SaaS application, right? So if you're using something like LDAP or SAML to, or some single sign-on tool for letting people have access to the main tool, you want to make sure that the analytic piece also can take advantage of that, right? To make sure that, oh, this person, is from this company and they're in the HR department and they have clearance, at this level, and so therefore they should be able to see these dashboards. That's great, assuming you can do it in an automated fashion. If you're trying to do that in a manual fashion for hundreds or thousands of users, that's just not going to work.
Absolutely. And Jessica, Sam, would you say that seems like it reflects your experience, but does that sound about right?
Yeah, it does. So it was one of the things that really helped us get this up and rolling, because we had a lot of work just to get our data ready to go to be used, that we were able to get a lot from the kind of filtering, being able to download, that we didn't have to build in-house. So I definitely agree with that.
Great. All right. Well, Jessica and Sam, I have a question for you from an audience member who wants to, well, really, she wants to have you elaborate a little bit more on the cohort analysis that helped increase customer adoption.
Sure. So the cohort analysis, so the idea is that you want to kind of group people or your users, or kind of however you identify your cohort, together, and then start tracking their usage over time. So what we did using Looker was using the iLooker data, so we could download who was logging in and seeing each of the dashboards. So we downloaded that in and then started tracking kind of who's looking at it this week, next week, and really we cared about monthly. So we started looking at it weekly, but realized we didn't have as much value by looking at a weekly cohort, and then seeing if you log in this month, do you log in again the next month, and then taking that into a blended average. There's a couple of examples that we got from just like on the internet. There was some really good Medium articles about it too, if you're interested in really learning how to dive in. I think kind of the two things that we learned was, how do we want to group our clients together? Do we want to do it by size or by industry, or kind of by like who is looking at it? The other thing is like, what's the right frequency? And a lot of this will depend on whatever product need you have, but do you need to look at it monthly or weekly? Or if it's something like a game, like do you need to do it kind of like more of a daily cohort? And then kind of how long do you expect, and like what are you hoping to have as that ideal metric? So hopefully that helps.
Great. Yeah, no, it does. And to the audience member who asked that initial question, if you have any follow-up questions, please make sure to pop them in the questions box. So this is a question that I think can apply both to Looker and to Namely, and it's about prioritizing features and prioritizing changes. And to Namely, did you find that asking or measuring feature demand by how many customers asked for it was an accurate predictor for which features to prioritize? And then Daniel, you talked about how when you choose to buy rather than build your solution, your analytics solution, how sometimes there can be a slow response time for the customers of those solutions if they want something changed. So have you found any, this audience member is interested in hearing the prioritization methods that are used on both ends and whether you found they've been effective.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in. This is Daniel. Just to answer the sort of the second part of that question. I mean, I do think that nothing that you build or buy is going to perfectly meet every single wish on your wish list, right? And so to the extent that you can, using all of the tools at your disposal, surveying, user interviews, workshops where you're actually watching users use the product, to the extent that you can gather feedback from a lot of different sources to understand where are people getting stuck, what could be better, what do they really need, and focus in on that given the limited resources that you're going to have. I think that's really important. I'm also a huge proponent of sort of MVPing stuff, rolling out a really minimum viable product. I don't think there's any substitute for actually putting the option of using the thing in front of people and seeing what they do, asking them, would you theoretically use this theoretical product that theoretically is perfect in your theoretical mind? Just doesn't cut it. Putting an actual product in front of them is so much different. And, I think Jessica or Sam mentioned briefly iLooker, but what that is, for folks who aren't familiar, is actually it's Looker on Looker. So in every Looker instance, you can go and look at the usage statistics of your users and understand how are they using the product. And so rolling out a new dashboard and understanding, are people using it, are they loading it, are they clicking on individual tiles, what are they doing, are they scheduling it for themselves, can provide that really rich feedback about whether what you're building is actually what's needed.
Sure. So with the prioritization part, there's a lot of different inputs that we use when prioritizing. I did only kind of touch on the one, but we're a B2B company, so there are a lot of different kind of sources we can get data through. We talk to our sales and our pre-sales team to see what potential prospects are asking about. We get on calls with them as well, with our prospects. We work with our client success team to see what our current client base wants to say. And again, that's another point where we hop on calls and talk to our clients directly. We aggregate that feedback. We also twice a year do holistic surveys that are pretty involved with a very large set of our clients. And we get a lot of feedback from that as well. And there's a few other, like competitive analysis. There's a few other things that are pretty big inputs into that. So it wasn't just that we looked at kind of what were people asking for and picked the one with the highest number. There were a number of different inputs into that.
The highest number did help picking the subject areas. Yep.
Great. Sorry, Jessica, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have anything else that you were going to say on that?
No worries. I was saying I just drilled into how we analyzed the user feedback data, and that helped us to determine kind of what are people asking for. That's just to add into like the other sources that we collected data from as well.
Great. Thanks for giving us more of a picture of how your process worked. All right, so I have a question for the Namely team. So there's a listener who wants to know about generally how much styling controls do you have with Looker's visualizations, and then specifically, is Namely using any drill down capabilities in their Looker visualizations?
Sure, I can take this one. I'll start with the drill downs. We aren't using any drill down capabilities right now. There's kind of two reasons. So one is, for example, like the diversity dashboard, we actually didn't want to allow people to drill down into specific demographics because we wanted to have a level of like looking at this from a high level, how are you tracking, without needing to drill down specifically like who is of each ethnicity. Mm-hmm. The other part is, since this was our first time doing kind of like data and embedded in analytics, there's a little bit that has to go into how you structure the data so that the drill downs work properly. So there were a couple of dashboards where we tried to enable it and just didn't have the data kind of structured correctly on our side. So we're going through and kind of reorganizing things a little bit so that we can have drill downs for things like the anniversary and birthday charts. And then as for, I think the other part of the question was about how much control we have from a design standpoint. Mm-hmm. So Looker has a lot of different looks and different data visualizations. They have all that we've wanted to build so far. And you can customize the kind of like the different ways that the graph looks and then the different colors that are involved. Some of the things that we can't customize, and I've been talking with Looker's product team on this, there's some things like the font. Our designers want to change the font. We don't have the ability to customize that. But for the most part, we've been able to customize it and configure it to fit into our application.
Yeah, and that's something that we're actively prioritizing. I know Jessica really wants that Comic Sans look, and we're going to make sure that she can get it soon.
Thanks. Oh, Jessica, I really would have taken you for a papyrus person.
I think I use Comic Sans for balsamic all the time. Papyrus would be cool. I'll explore that.
Yeah, it'd be pretty fun and take us back to ancient Egypt. So did you find that your design team was satisfied with the standards that you set at the end as a solution?
Our, especially the diversity dashboard, our most recent one, when we had the most involvement with them, they've been really pleased with kind of the end product and being able to control how it looks together as a whole. So I do think it's been a little bit of time from us iterating through the different dashboards to figure out how we work together and how to find the right balance, but we've definitely gotten there.
Great. Thank you. All right, Daniel, we have an audience question that I think you could help with. Somebody wants to know if Looker supports a white label solution that's not embedded. This particular question asker is concerned that an embedded solution with their current web-based tool would take too long.
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, we do have a white label option, and I would push back on the idea that that embedding will take too long. You know, the iframe method of embedding is pretty darn straightforward, so that you can, you know, literally throw together a dashboard in a matter of, you know, minutes or hours, and click a link and have it ready to embed. So, you know, for sure, if you want to talk more and get more details, reach out to us. You know, email us discover@looker.com. But yes, we do have a white label solution, and I bet embedding may be in your future.
That's great. Yeah, and that touches upon kind of that last point you talked about also, how maybe a bit more of an upfront time cost, but in the end, the maintenance, or the lack of maintenance makes it really worth it. So actually, we do have an audience question about that kind of maintenance, and so you do have to set up data pipelines in order to get Looker to work and have these dashboards that are available, like to namely clients. And so how, I guess, has Namely encountered any clients that have trouble setting up these data pipelines, or perhaps with data hygiene in order to make sure that the pipelines work, especially if you're working with people who aren't used to delivering data, and they are looking for a solution that'll do it for them? How easy has that adoption been?
It's been pretty easy on our end. So our platform controls that data. So we build the pipeline once and it flows from every client. The data is as clean as they make it in the platform, though they don't have a ton of places where they have the option of making it really dirty, if that makes sense. So by and large, people are pretty concerned with the quality of their HR data as well. I don't think there's a lot of, you know, companies out there that want to have incorrect salaries listed in their payroll software. So we don't run into a lot of challenges there.
That's great. All right, well, we have time for one more question. So we have another Namely oriented question. So you talked about the two types of users, kind of the casual users and the power users. Does Namely have a plan to, or how do you plan to find a balance between the two types of users? Are there two solutions, or is this a solution that meets in the middle?
It's a really great question. We've been having a lot of chats about that as well. So I think a lot of it for the first part that we're going to try is to help level everybody up and try to provide some more parts of the page that can help users understand analytics. So just really focusing on presenting the data in a way that's a little bit easier to understand and provide a little bit more information, like in context. We also have a really great client support team, so we're going to try to reach out to some of the clients who may not be as comfortable using analytics and helping provide better training and documentation materials about, hey, if you're looking at a headcount report, like here's kind of what this means for your company. So it's some of it may be tool specific, but some of it may also be, this is the first time that our customers are ever looking at data in this way. So we want to help provide them with the resources to just use data and use different analytics within their own decisions. So we're going to try that as a first step and see how it goes, and then possibly split it up into two different kind of sets of users. So more to see there if you're a Namely customer.
Well, great. It'll be exciting to see how that develops, and good luck with those solutions. That's about all we have time for today. Before you run, please remember we have 3 more sessions in this series, and our schedule is being updated all the time at the URLs listed at the bottom of this slide. I hope you all enjoyed our speakers today. I found these examples super interesting. Thanks so much to our sponsor, Looker, and to our guests, Sam, Jessica, and Daniel, and to all of you for attending. And once again, I'm Hannah Flynn. You can find Product Management Today on Twitter at ProdMGMT Today. And again, 3 more sessions after this. You'll be able to find the schedule at the links at the bottom of the slide, and it's constantly being updated. You'll receive a recording within 48 hours of this webinar. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.